There is a quiet, insidious power in niceness. It disguises itself as virtue, as kindness, as decency. It whispers that to please is to survive, that to accommodate is to exist without conflict, that to smile through irritation is the path to peace. But you have lived long enough to see through this illusion. You have felt the weight of every compromise, every concession, every time your voice was silenced by the polite imperative to be nice. And in that silence, something vital died. Your freedom. To stop being nice is not to become cruel. It is not to lash out or dominate or embrace tyranny. It is to reclaim the sovereignty of your own consciousness, to recognize that your energy, your time, your focus are finite, sacred, and must be guarded against the constant encroachment of expectation. Nietzsche wrote of the herd, of the masses who demand conformity, who thrive on the submission of the individual. Niceness is often the mask that allows the herd to bend your will without force. Stop being nice and you stop surrendering. Consider the subtle ways niceness cages the soul. You say yes when you mean no. You nod when you want to shake your head. You swallow irritation and bury resentment under a smile. You invest your energy in the approval of others while your own ambitions, your own needs, your own essence quietly starve. There is a psychological thievery here. Every nice act that compromises you steals a fragment of your freedom, a piece of your authenticity, a portion of the raw, unmediated self that the world was meant to nurture. Syphoria begins here. The painful recognition of the subtle chains we wear voluntarily. The mind recoils, the body tenses, the soul protests, and yet the social imperative, the unspoken law that demands constant politeness, constant accommodation, keeps us trapped. But awareness is the key. Awareness is the spark that ignites the furnace of transformation. When you see clearly the cost of being nice to the point of self-erasure, you begin to understand that freedom is not in the approval of others. Freedom is in the reclamation of self. Mindset shifts when niceness is no longer a requirement. The world expects your acquiescence. It expects your compliance. It expects your constant emotional labor, your polite silencing, your endless concessions. But what if you refused? What if, in the subtle, unspoken ways, you reclaimed your right to honesty, your right to boundary, your right to self-prioritization? Suddenly, every conversation becomes a field of choice. Every interaction becomes a test of alignment with your true self, rather than submission to external expectation. Clarity emerges in this refusal, like dawn slicing through the fog. Belief in yourself becomes your armor. To stop being nice, you must believe in the legitimacy of your own needs, your own limits, your own worth. Not arrogance, not vanity, not self-absorption, but a profound recognition that your existence is not a service, it is an experience, and you have the right to navigate it authentically. The herd will resist this. People will label you selfish, callous, even cruel. History is full of the uncomfortable truth that those who assert themselves in the face of social expectation are often vilified. Machiavelli would have smiled at this. The perception of virtue is manipulated by the powerful, but the reality of sovereignty is claimed by the courageous. Vision sharpens when niceness is abandoned as a false virtue. You see who is aligned with your energy and who seeks to drain it. You see clearly the relationships that nourish and the ones that deplete. You see the structures, the hierarchies, the subtle manipulations that keep people compliant, exhausted, and under the thumb of expectation. And in this seeing, purpose crystallizes. Your time, your attention, your effort are not infinite. You begin to allocate them with strategy, precision, and unapologetic intent. Every no becomes a declaration of freedom. Every boundary, a monument to sovereignty. Discipline transforms this newfound freedom into enduring power. To stop being nice is not to surrender to impulsivity. It is not to lash out recklessly or indulge ego. It is to practice consistency, to train your instincts, to honor your own needs before social expectation, to cultivate the patience to act deliberately rather than reactively. Discipline is the architecture of freedom. It structures your interactions, fortifies your boundaries, and teaches your psyche that autonomy is not negotiable. Action becomes deliberate. You do not withdraw into coldness. You engage with clarity. You do not dominate out of fear or anger. You assert from presence and power. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every boundary you enforce carries the weight of intention. Aldous Huxley warned of modern slavery, not chains of iron, but chains of perception, of expectation, of social compulsion. To stop being nice in the ways that harm your sovereignty is to break these chains. You act in alignment with self, and in that action, liberation begins. Gratitude emerges, paradoxically, as freedom deepens. You are grateful not for the approval of others, not for the absence of conflict, but for the clarity of perception that allows you to act authentically. You are grateful for the courage to confront discomfort, to risk judgment, to prioritize your own soul over the shallow demands of social nicety. Gratitude turns what once felt like defiance into a celebration of autonomy, and every choice, every boundary, every assertion becomes a ritual of self-honoring. Adaptability evolves as you navigate the consequences of this shift. The world will resist. People will test your limits. Systems will strain to reclaim the obedience you once offered freely. But like water flowing around stone, you bend without breaking, you redirect without losing integrity, you flow without compromise. Freedom is not rigidity. It is intelligence in motion. The unshackled self negotiates the currents of expectation with awareness, presence, and precision, allowing life to unfold without surrender to obligation or guilt. Resilience becomes a natural outcome. Every challenge that once demanded subservience now becomes a test of sovereignty. Every criticism, every accusation, every social judgment becomes a rehearsal in autonomy. The more you practice the art of unapologetic alignment with self, the more resilient you become to the manipulations, expectations, and subtle coercions of the world. You no longer bend to survive, you bend to navigate. And in this navigation, you discover the unassailable power of self-possession. Learning never ceases. Every encounter, every misstep, every boundary pushed, every conversation that tests your resolve is a lesson in the architecture of freedom. The untrained will see your refusal to comply as hostility. The wise will recognize it as mastery. You study human nature, social expectation, and projection. You decipher the motivations behind polite coercion. You learn to discern between genuine connection and energy-draining obligation. And with every lesson, your autonomy grows, your clarity deepens, and your presence becomes irresistible, not because it pleases, but because it is whole, complete, sovereign. Here lies the ultimate revelation. The liberation you feel when you stop being nice is not social. It is spiritual. It is not external. It is internal. The world may mislabel you, misjudge you, resist you, but you no longer seek permission, approval, or acceptance. You have reclaimed your energy, your voice, your sovereignty. The niceness that once bound you in chains of subtle coercion has been replaced with authenticity, intention, and the unassailable power of self-possession. You are no longer apologetic for your existence. You do not dilute your truth to avoid discomfort. You do not negotiate your boundaries to placate expectation. You exist fully, unapologetically, entirely, and in that existence, you discover freedom in its purest form. You are no longer available to drain, to manipulate, to mold. You are available only to the alignment of your purpose, the expression of your essence, the integrity of your selfhood. This is the sovereignty of the liberated mind, the power of unapologetic authenticity, the clarity of unbroken presence. Every smile, every word, every act is now intentional. Every relationship, every project, every endeavor is now chosen, not coerced. The chains of niceness dissolve, revealing the raw, unmediated landscape of your consciousness, uncharted and untouchable. Freedom is not granted, it is seized. It is forged in the refusal to surrender your energy, your attention, your time, or your will to the expectations of others. Every no you speak, every boundary you honor, every act of self-prioritization is a declaration. I am sovereign. I am unshackled. I am free. The world may label you, misinterpret you, resist you. Let it. Your freedom does not rely on approval. Your presence does not require validation. You walk among the chaos of expectation as a force of clarity, a beacon of authenticity, a testament to the unassailable power of the self-directed soul. Stop being nice to the point of self-erasure. Stop surrendering your energy in pursuit of approval. Stop compromising your essence for the comfort of others. And in this refusal, in this reclamation, you finally begin to breathe fully, deeply unencumbered. You are free, entirely free. And in that freedom, you finally begin to live. The freedom you taste when you stop being nice is intoxicating, but it is not a fleeting pleasure. It is a permanent reclamation of your sovereignty. Every choice you make now reverberates with intention, echoing through the corridors of your consciousness like a bell that cannot be silenced. The polite compromises that once tethered you to the will of others are gone. They have been replaced with precision, clarity, and purpose. And in their place stands a self unassailable, unshakable, unapologetically whole. Consider the subtle tyranny of niceness. It disguises itself as virtue, as empathy, as morality. It convinces you that your silence preserves harmony, that your concession maintains peace, that your compliance demonstrates goodness. Yet, behind this mask lies control, manipulation, and theft. The theft of your energy, your voice, your will. Every yes given reluctantly is a betrayal of self. Every smile worn to appease is a fragment of your essence surrendered. And when you see this truth, the first step toward liberation is clear. Stop being nice at the expense of your own life. Syphoria strikes here, the painful yet clarifying recognition that you have lived half a life for others, that your authenticity has been rationed, that your energy has been spent on the validation of people incapable of appreciating it. The discomfort is raw, but it is necessary. It is the friction of transformation, the fire of self-realization. You cannot reclaim your freedom without facing the cost of compliance, without acknowledging the subtle wounds caused by over-accommodation, without confronting the habits that have kept you small. Your mindset begins to shift. You understand that your energy is finite, that every conversation, every relationship, every task you undertake is a transaction. And in this recognition, you begin to calculate with clarity, to choose with precision, to act with sovereignty. Niceness is no longer automatic. It is no longer a reflex. It becomes a tool wielded consciously, not a chain that binds unconsciously. You learn to smile, to speak, to engage, yes, but only when it serves your purpose, aligns with your values, and honors your boundaries. Belief in yourself strengthens. The world may resist this newfound autonomy. People may accuse you of selfishness, cruelty, or arrogance, but you understand the truth. To assert yourself is not to harm others, it is to protect the most sacred asset you possess, your selfhood. History rewards the bold, the unapologetic, the autonomous. Machiavelli wrote of perception and power. Nietzsche spoke of becoming who you are. The refusal to over-accommodate, to dilute yourself for the comfort of the masses, is an act of mastery. It is sovereignty in motion. Vision sharpens when niceness is no longer a default. You begin to see clearly who belongs in your life and who does not. You recognize energy vampires, manipulators, and passive-aggressive predators whose kindness is a veil for exploitation. You recognize the subtle hierarchies and expectations that society uses to coerce compliance, And in this vision, you see the path forward, a life organized around alignment, intention, and unshakable self-priority. Every boundary you set is a beacon of clarity, every refusal, a monument to freedom, every choice, a declaration of autonomy. Purpose becomes undeniable. You no longer expend your time placating the masses or performing the labor of social approval. Your energy is reserved for the pursuit of your goals, your vision, your evolution. Aldous Huxley warned of modern slavery chains forged not of iron, but of perception, expectation, and obligation. You are breaking free from these chains, consciously and deliberately, reclaiming the power that has always been rightfully yours. Discipline becomes your foundation. The refusal to be nice at your own expense is not impulsive rebellion. It is intentional practice. You train yourself to recognize the subtle manipulations, to assert your boundaries consistently, to prioritize your energy with surgical precision. Discipline structures your freedom, fortifies your sovereignty, and ensures that autonomy is not a temporary victory, but a permanent state of being. Action is deliberate. You no longer react reflexively to expectation, coercion, or guilt. Every choice is calculated, every word intentional, every interaction aligned with your values. You act from strength, not from fear. You speak from clarity, not from compulsion. You engage fully, but only on terms that honor your essence. In this way, freedom becomes not a theory, not a desire, but a lived reality, tangible in every decision, every interaction, every breath. Gratitude deepens the power of this transformation. You are grateful for the clarity that discomfort brought, for the courage it required to assert yourself, for the insight that came from recognizing the chains you once wore unknowingly. Every boundary, every refusal, every act of self-prioritization is now a ritual of thanksgiving for the mind, for the soul, for the life that you are finally living authentically. Gratitude transforms what could feel like defiance into celebration, what could feel like isolation into empowerment, and what could feel like rebellion into sovereignty. Adaptability grows as you navigate the world with this newfound freedom. Expect resistance, expect testing, expect subtle manipulations designed to reclaim your compliance. But like water, you flow around obstacles without losing integrity. You bend when necessary, redirect energy with intelligence, and preserve your center through every turbulence. Rigidity fractures, adaptability endures. The unshackled self learns to navigate expectation with elegance, precision, and unwavering authority. Resilience becomes instinctual. Every provocation, every social judgment, every subtle attempt to reclaim your energy becomes an opportunity to reinforce strength. The more you practice sovereignty, the more unshakable your presence becomes. You are no longer a participant in the coercion of expectation. You are an architect of your own experience. Challenges become training grounds. Adversity becomes fuel. Resistance becomes proof of your autonomy. Learning is infinite. Every encounter becomes a lesson in human nature, in social mechanics, in the psychology of influence and projection. You study motives, dissect behaviors, and recognize the patterns of manipulation and expectation. Your awareness expands, your discernment sharpens, your energy becomes more precious. With each observation, you grow stronger, clearer, and more unbothered. The world can attempt to pull you into compliance, but the trained mind moves freely through manipulation, expectation, and subtle coercion. At last, you understand the ultimate truth. Niceness was never your virtue. It was a prison. Your freedom lies not in appeasement, but in authenticity. It lies not in performing for others, but in honoring your own existence. It lies not in compromise, but in the unwavering assertion of your boundaries, your energy, and your sovereignty. The chains dissolve, the mask falls, the weight lifts, and you are left standing fully, entirely, unshakably free. You walk through life untethered. You are no longer a slave to expectation, a hostage to approval, a prisoner of politeness. You speak your truth, act with intention, and prioritize your essence without apology. The world may misunderstand, resist, or judge, let it. Your freedom does not require permission. Your sovereignty does not need validation. Your power is inherent, undeniable, and unassailable. You are no longer nice at the expense of your soul. You are no longer compliant at the cost of your freedom. You are no longer silenced to preserve comfort. You are alive, fully, consciously, sovereignly. And in this sovereignty, you discover the ultimate liberation, the freedom to exist entirely, unapologetically, and authentically in a world that will never demand less than everything of you except from the one person whose approval truly matters: yourself. You are free. You are sovereign. You are alive. The freedom you now inhabit is not passive. It is active, kinetic, a force that shapes reality around you. You realize that niceness is a currency the world demands. And like any currency, it can be spent but only wisely. Every moment you once gave away to avoid conflict, to earn approval, to soften the sharp edges of your truth, was a debt to the expectations of others. Now, that debt is canceled. You spend your energy only where it compounds, only where it builds your life rather than erodes it. Syphoria deepens as you confront the subtle betrayals of habitual niceness. Think of every conversation where you swallowed your anger, every compromise that compromised your soul, every silent nod that hid your dissent. These were not acts of kindness. They were acts of submission. They were concessions to the collective herd, the invisible tribunal of societal expectation, the unconscious demand that you perform compliance at the cost of self. And in acknowledging this, you awaken to the raw truth. Freedom was always yours to claim, and you are claiming it now. Your mindset transforms into one of calculated presence. You no longer move blindly in pursuit of approval. You observe, you evaluate, you decide. People who once manipulated your kindness now meet a conscious boundary. The subtle coercions, the veiled criticisms, the gentle pressures of expectation, all are met with awareness, not reflex. You have learned that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the mastery of response. To stop being nice at the expense of self is not aggression. It is intelligence. It is sovereignty. It is survival of the self in a world that seeks to appropriate your energy. Belief in your own legitimacy becomes the pillar of every interaction. You no longer need validation from the herd, for you know your value is inherent. Machiavelli's lessons on power whisper from history. Perception can be manipulated. Expectation can be imposed. Social approval can be coerced. But self-mastery cannot be taken. Nietzsche's insistence to become who you are resonates now more than ever. Your refusal to over-accommodate, your assertion of personal boundaries, your reclamation of energy, these are the acts of becoming fully yourself. Vision crystallizes. You see the subtle leeches of social niceness, those who ask endlessly without reciprocation, who take more than they give, who manipulate kindness into servitude. You see the invisible structures that reward compliance and punish autonomy, and you move differently through this world, selectively, strategically, sovereignly. Your yes is valuable because it is given consciously. Your no is liberating because it is intentional. Every interaction is filtered through the lens of alignment, and suddenly your life is not a maze of compromise, but a map of deliberate sovereignty. Purpose emerges, undeniable, as a consequence of this clarity. You are no longer diffused across the demands of others. Your energy, your attention, your effort, all are focused on your own vision, your own goals, your own evolution. Every project, every relationship, every choice is measured against the question: does this honor my sovereignty? Does this align with my purpose? If not, it is irrelevant. If yes, it becomes fuel, propulsion, momentum. The modern chains of expectation dissolve as you prioritize what matters: your life, your growth, your freedom. Discipline transforms this awakening into habitual mastery. Autonomy is not a single act, it is a practice. Every refusal, every boundary enforced, every conscious act of prioritization is a repetition in the gym of self-governance. Niceness becomes a tool, not a default. Compassion becomes intentional, not obligatory. Discipline structures freedom, ensuring that sovereignty is permanent, not situational. It allows you to move through life unshaken, unmanipulated, unstoppable. Action is deliberate, sharp, and uncompromising. You no longer respond reflexively to social expectation. You no longer acquiesce to avoid discomfort. Every step is calculated, every word intentional, every engagement aligned with your purpose. You act from presence, from power, from clarity. You do not react, you command. You do not submit, you navigate. You do not compromise. You architect reality in accordance with your essence. Gratitude deepens, paradoxically, as autonomy grows. You are grateful not for the comfort of others, but for the courage that discomfort demanded. You are grateful not for approval, but for the clarity that judgment reveals. Every boundary, every refusal, every act of self-assertion becomes an act of thanksgiving for your energy, your time, your consciousness, and the freedom you now inhabit. Gratitude turns rebellion into ritual, defiance into ceremony, autonomy into celebration. Adaptability sharpens. The world will resist. Social norms will test you. People accustomed to your compliance will push, probe, and provoke. But like water flowing around stone, you bend without breaking. You redirect without compromise. You navigate without yielding. Rigidity shatters under pressure. Adaptability endures. Your freedom is not fragile. It is intelligent, strategic, and unassailable. You flow, you adjust, you remain sovereign, regardless of the currents that attempt to pull you into compliance. Resilience becomes instinctual. Every test, every resistance, every judgment from others strengthens rather than weakens. You no longer bend to survive. You bend to navigate. Every challenge faced without surrender fortifies the mind, expands the spirit, and solidifies the unshakable foundation of autonomy. You are no longer a participant in subtle tyranny. You are the architect of your own reality. The storms may rage, but you stand unbothered, untouchable, sovereign. Learning becomes perpetual, deliberate, precise. Every interaction, every subtle manipulation, every veiled expectation is now a lesson. You study motives, observe behavior, and discern the patterns of influence and projection. You learn to distinguish between genuine connection and energy-draining obligation. Each observation expands your consciousness, sharpens your discernment, and strengthens the boundaries that safeguard your energy. The world may try to reclaim your compliance, but you navigate it with intelligence, awareness, and unyielding autonomy. And at last, the truth crystallizes. Niceness was never your virtue. It was your cage. Freedom lies not in the approval of others, but in the integrity of your own self. It lies not in compromise, but in deliberate, unapologetic sovereignty. The chains dissolve, the mask falls, the weight lifts. You are no longer diffused across the expectations of others. You are concentrated, focused, deliberate, alive in the full spectrum of your power. You walk through life untethered. Approval, expectation, judgment, all are irrelevant. You speak your truth, honor your boundaries, and prioritize your essence. The world may mislabel, resist, or misinterpret, but your freedom does not rely on perception. Sovereignty does not require validation. Your power is inherent, undeniable, unassailable. You are no longer nice at the expense of your soul. You are no longer compliant at the cost of your freedom. You are alive, fully, consciously, sovereignly. And in this sovereignty, You discover the ultimate liberation, the freedom to exist entirely, unapologetically, authentically, in a world that demands everything except what truly matters, except the mastery of self. You are free. You are sovereign. You are alive. And in this freedom, you finally begin to live. And now, at the summit of your awakening, you see the truth that the world cannot give and cannot take. Your freedom is yours alone. To stop being nice at the expense of your soul is to step into a power that cannot be measured, a sovereignty that cannot be challenged, a life that cannot be borrowed or stolen. Every word you speak, every boundary you hold, every act of self-prioritization resonates with the clarity of one who has reclaimed their essence. You are no longer a servant to expectation, a hostage of approval, or a prisoner of polite compromise. You act with intention, speak with authority, and live without apology. The world may misunderstand, resist, or even condemn you, but it no longer controls you. Its judgments are whispers against the immovable fortress of your consciousness. Its expectations are shadows on the ground beneath the blazing sun of your sovereignty. Freedom is not permission granted. It is a conquest claimed. Sovereignty is not given. It is forged in the fires of self-awareness, discipline, and courage. And in claiming this, you rise above the herd, above manipulation, above coercion. You are no longer nice at the cost of yourself. You are unapologetically present. You are deliberately powerful. You are fully alive. Walk through the world unshakable. Speak your truth without fear. Protect your energy without guilt. Prioritize your essence without compromise. And in doing so, you finally know the liberation that was always waiting for you, the freedom to be entirely, fiercely, and unconditionally yourself. You are free. You are sovereign. You are alive. And in that freedom, nothing can ever touch the power of who you truly are.